It's like, okay, this won't work. I got to change this. My members can't do that. I got to change that. And so it's like, man, if you're going to take 2 hours to have to adjust everything, you might as well just write it yourself.
The Fitness Movement is brought to you by Zor Fitness. We offer coaching and individualized program design, as well as educational content for coaches and athletes. It's all one place, zorfitness.com. Today we're going to talk about programming for classes, and we're going to keep this short. Maybe we'll have a follow-up at some point if people express interest in this one. But this is going to be a good contrast to a lot of what we talk about on here, which is individual design, where you're writing for a specific athlete and you know all of their limitations because you've worked with them, you've got data on them, you've seen their testing stuff. Whereas obviously with classes, it's a demographic where more or less you're writing sort of for an average or like an avatar or maybe a few avatars. So I know you've at least written some classes. Is that something you do regularly anymore, Chris, or are you involved in that still?
So I am still involved in it, but I don't really write our class workouts. So,
but you approve everything? Is that how it works?
Yep. So internally we have 2 different programs that we do. Not that I have to get into the details on all that, but essentially whenever a new block of programming is coming up, the person who writes it has to send it to me. So I look over and approve everything for our gyms.
Yeah. So in many ways, it almost allows you to be a little bit more objective because you're not attached to it because it's not your baby. You're like,
exactly.
I can give feedback on this and I didn't write it, so I'm not going to get hurt about it.
Yeah, same thing like I wrote a cycle, I don't know, maybe a year ago at this point, maybe longer. We had some staffing changes, so I was like, all right, I need to write the programming for 6 weeks so that like I know we got programming for 6 weeks. And even then, like, it wasn't like, cool, I wrote it, go do it. I gave it to someone on staff, like, hey, can you look this over and let me know if there's any issues or things that need to be changed?
Yep. Yeah. Do you guys on the back end have any, or even like you, as you're like maybe approving it and putting your final stamp on it, is there any like requirements that you have? Are people kind of free reign and then you just sort of suggestions as to like changes? Do you have like any resources for them, like avatars that they should think about writing for? Or is it just sort of like based on their gym?
Yeah, so we have a couple guidelines we go off of. So one guideline is we like to have the work in class be usually between 25 and 35 minutes. We'll have the occasional workout go longer, like a 40-minute workout, but that's few and far between. That might be like for our gyms, like a Thursday or Sunday, where it's like super cardio heavy. Movements are like very, very, very simple technically. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at burpees, double unders, and
so
rolling.
Does that include strength work?
Yep.
Okay, so it's like strength and Metcon or just Metcon or intervals, whatever it is. That's the time that you have for that.
Yep. So we try to keep it between 25 and 35 minutes, and that might include rest. So what I mean by that is like, let's say, so like during our current cycle at our gyms, right, we're doing cluster back squats. So it's like 4 sets, 3, 3, 3, right? That section might take 15 to 20 minutes, and then the workout's 10 minutes long. All right. And then Tuesdays are, much longer conditioning. So it's like 20 to 30 minutes worth of conditioning. And then we have some accessory work, whether that's band pull aparts or power off presses and dumbbell rows, like stuff like that. And so that's kind of the marker we've seen that works really, really well, because that allows for a full warm up, that allows for transition time, that allows for the, chatting, right? Like you have to factor in like
a
people.
Brief.
Yeah, even people communing. Like part of why people come to your gym and my gym or versus like, I don't know, a standard global gym is they actually get to connect with people, like I'm sure you see it. It's like people become friends. And so it's like, it really is the best hour of their day. So they want to like see their friends. And then a consistent cool down, which is super important, right? Like, especially with the demos at our gym, where most of our gyms, the average age is probably 38 to 45, 46 years old, 35 to 45, it's like you need to make sure you're doing some solid cool down, right? Like we are not the gyms.
Frank walking over to your car.
Yeah.
Get it?
We're not one of these gyms that's like has people chewing up barbells and like competing in CrossFit competitions every single weekend who, so it's like
who also should be doing a flush and
well, yeah, but that's a whole other conversation. So yeah, that's kind of the markers we look at. We like to rotate training blocks every 6 weeks. We have a different programmer every 6 weeks. So we have a focus per 6 weeks, and that kind of allows enough consistency, but enough variety. Because for me, I've also seen gyms where you might have one person programming, they have certain biases, or like Mondays always X, Tuesdays always Y. And that's great.
That can be, it can be great, but
that's what I'm saying.
Like
that's great, but it's like if there's no change of that, right? Like that might be good for a 4 to 6 week block, but if there's no change, you might have someone who only comes Monday, Wednesday, Friday who never back squats or never deadlifts, and all of a sudden they have all these imbalances.
Yep.
So we do that too.
Even us, like I think for individual design, we'll have like priority days was what we call it, where it's like you're putting like your biggest areas of like, essentially like these are the things that we really want to push forward, and like we want to dedicate the most time and resources to these things. And that's always, for example, if they're coming off like almost always like when they're coming off rest day, it's like the day following. Like you're the freshest, you're the most ready to go, your readiness should be high, you should feel fresh, your joints should feel good, blah, blah, blah. You're getting it then. And that doesn't really need to change because the person's going to show up and do the work on that day. Whereas like if you're in a class environment and you got people that show up Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, they might get like, it's like some gyms do like ROMWOD on Thursday, they do a partner workout on Saturday, so they may only get one like normal workout on like a Tuesday. And if that's like, for example, always intervals or always conditioning and they never get strength, like they're missing a huge hole.
Yeah, exactly. And so you need to have some sort of variety there. But I do think if I've talked about this with the people in our company, it's like there has to be some sort of structure as well. There has to be something you're looking to build towards, right? For a multitude of reasons. But one is like, I don't know, there aren't as many CrossFit gyms out by you, obviously, but like I've heard CrossFit gyms that like every workout's programmed the day before. And it's like you're just writing workouts at that point. There's no, like, how do you create any structure or consistency? And then on top of it, from like a client retention standpoint, man, if I've been working out at your gym for 2 years and I haven't seen a PR in anything, it's like, why the hell am I still here?
Yeah. You have some good friends there. You're friends with the owner or something.
Yeah, it's like, so I don't know. I look at it like programming is an interesting dynamic in a class setting, because I do believe it's something that if you're a gym owner, like you can't be spending all your time on, because you do have a lot of responsibilities in marketing and sales and
but it needs to be somebody's baby.
Exactly.
Even if it's like one of your coaches who's just super passionate about it, like, and they want to take it on, and you just make sure that you look over it to catch any red flags, or, oh, hey, we squatted 6 times this week, like that kind of stuff.
Totally agree. Because at the end, because it's also your product, right? Like it can't be the biggest thing you focus your time on as a gym owner, because you got to put butts in seats. But at the same time, if you put the butts in seats and then you beat them over the head with the seat, like they're just gonna leave, you know?
Yeah. So
how do you look at class programming?
Yeah, in a very similar way. Like for me, I would never sit down and write like a day of like do like a day at a time for like an individual client.
Yeah.
Like trying to get into like a flow for program design is challenging enough if you do it for at least a few days at a time, or at least like a few sessions at a time. Whereas like if you do it one session at a time, like good luck. You better have some like really good systems in place to be able to like get into like that head state correctly and do it. So for me, like that would just be a disaster to try to open it up and look at it fresh every single day. For me, it's like no different for an individual client, where I have like a a map of where, so I write the program for our gym, so good context here. But for example, I have like the long-term calendar where it's like very general focal points or priorities, not even like specific movements and things like that, just like big picture stuff. Like for example, like wintertime, okay, we're going to start thinking about like open prep. Not that everything's going to be geared that way, but people need to be ready to at least handle the open and the open movements and the volume and that sort of thing. We're going to do Murph in the end of May. So it's like, okay, we need to at least be prepared people enough when they're going to do that they don't get injured when they go to do Murph.
Yeah.
Again, really basic things like we're going to do more running in summer, or we're probably going to do more erg volume once the doors close here because we're not going to do as much running. And again, things like that. So a big picture of like yearly layout. And then I also do 6-week cycles. And that will get more specific with like the things that go into it so I basically create that skeleton for the class. And those are going to be, again, maybe a little bit more generalized than if it was like an individual client, but still specific enough across those 6 weeks where you're going to see meaningful change in those things. And then those priorities and the way that they're placed throughout the day are going to shift cycle to cycle so that they kind of stack on top of each other, and also shift what day you're going to be seeing certain patterns or time domains or things like that, where again, if somebody's coming on different days of the week, they're going to get a varied take of your CrossFit classes versus just showing up every Tuesday for their intervals or whatever.
Yeah. And that's something you mentioned there that you didn't necessarily elaborate on, but I have found, and I don't know if you've seen this, but I have found people who are new to programming for class, like writing the sets and the reps and the workouts is for most of those people way easier than thinking about like logistics. That's something that like a lot like I've had people hand me programs who have like, all right, can you take a look at this? I'm like, yeah, no problem. It's like, okay, well, dude, we got 6 benches, right? Like,
I was just gonna say benches, yes.
Or like
we have your GHD bench press workout. This is gonna be great for class.
Yeah, like we have 250-pound sandbags, right? Like, okay, I'm not saying no, like I'm not saying we can't use sandbags, but you have to use it in like an EMOM format or like some sort of format where
with
people
17 minutes rotating.
Right, where people are sharing versus where like with individual programming, you don't have to think about that. The only thing you have to think about is like, do you have this equipment? You got a skier? Yeah. Cool, we can use it. But yeah, that's something that you have to think about, right? Like you mentioned running. Dude, where you live and where I live, you get into mid-November, it's like the doors are closed, dude. Like we're done hitting the road, you know?
Especially at 5:30 a.m.
Yeah. Versus like if you live like with Day out in Arizona, you can run whatever you want, dude. It might be the opposite. You might pull them in the summer because it's 150 friggin' degrees outside.
Don't want to run over a scorpion or a snake or something.
Stepping over Gila monsters.
Yeah, but that'd be like one of the challenges if I guess maybe the other option, right, is like if you didn't select somebody in your community who is really passionate about programming to program design for your individual gym, then you would choose to go with some company that offers like CAP or CrossFit affiliate programming or one of the million companies that offers affiliate programming out there, and then just realize that rather than having the time it takes for someone to do that, you're gonna have to take that time to modify the equipment because not everything's gonna work for your facility. Like for example, like for us, it's like typically runs are 150 meters, which is one lap around our building, 265 meters, which is super random, but it's a lap around like the buildings out in front of our building and our building, or 400, 800, etc. Right? Like because like those are the even increments that work really well for us, right? We're if you do CAP, they're not going to ride a 265 meter run in the workout. Just not going to happen.
Yeah, and that's something where like for our company, we're pretty against using those. I said on a previous podcast, I totally understand why a gym owner would use that. Like I said, if you're solo gym owner,
exactly the same way.
Yeah, well,
like I think I understand why people would do it, and I don't think it's wrong, but I would never choose to do it.
Right. Well, but you also have a partner, right? Like there's where like you and Stacy, again, outside looking in, Ben, it's like, cool, Stacy, you're uniquely good at this stuff. You handle this. Me, Ben, I'm uniquely good at this stuff. I'll handle this.
I walked in today and we had like, what are those things where they tie a bunch of corn cobs together?
What?
You take like twine and like wrap like stalks of corn together.
Ben, this is not. They have like a name for it. This does not happen in New Jersey. We don't do.
It's like a cornucopia, but
yeah, we don't do corn necklaces.
No, it has a name. All right, somebody comment and let me know what the name of it is. I forget.
Your corn cob necklaces.
Corn stalks. Yeah, I forget what the name of it is, but there's a real name for it. But I walked in today and there was like pumpkins and like a jack-o'-lantern, fake jack-o'-lantern, and those stalks of corn at our entrance. Yeah. I was like, glad somebody here does this because it's not
exactly me. Dude, let's face it, people love that stuff, and if it was just you, it would be 4 white walls and a friggin'
4 black walls.
That's it. Yeah, 4 black walls, and just no, it would just be like a bland, like, what do you need that
Always
for?
Metal playing.
Yeah. So it's like having Stacy in the nicest way to put a woman's touch on some of that is probably a good thing.
Probably.
But I say all that to say, like, you guys can work well together. So we're in the same boat, right? Like, I understand if a gym owner is like, I need to do that because I need to save the hours in a week to work on these things so I can pay my bills. Like, okay, I understand that. But at the same time, that's if that same person was to ask me, do you think that's what's best for my members? My answer is going to be no. Because you never know what's going on behind the scenes of that company. Like, great example is I was talking to someone I know, I'm not going to name any names, who knows the ins and outs of a big name company in CrossFit, who started doing some affiliate programming and found out that they have a staff of 3 guys who write the programming for the affiliates, and they just rotate days. They don't write up a cycle. It's just like, all right, what'd you do yesterday? Okay, I'll do this today. And so it's like, I was like, all right, my mind was blown. I was like, this is a big name company.
Can't wait to hear who it was after this.
Yeah, I'll tell you off air. But it was like, this is a big company who a lot of people trust, and I know full well they're not using that. That's not what they do for their athletes, right?
But, and by the way, I do not agree with that, right? I think that's a terrible system. However, what we're kind of discussing in a way is, I don't want to say anti-CrossFit, but it's not the spirit of how CrossFit was originally programmed, I don't think.
Correct.
I think even people like now, like they'll have like a guest person for .com and they'll write like 2 or 3 weeks. And that was like never a thing before, as far as I know.
Yes.
Not that like necessarily like I'm not naive to think that, you know, Glassman, whoever wrote it back in the day, was like writing it day by day, but likely they did block off times, and it just wasn't clear like delineation. So like, this is one cycle when this is where it stops, and this is where the next one picks up. Right. So it wasn't like, you're not going to get like a periodization model with CrossFit. But you have to have some sort of structure. Like even at the L1, they teach you like a way to basically vary the takes of different movement patterns and how to track it, and how to make sure you're varying time domains where, okay, we haven't had a sprint one in this long, so we need to get a short time domain. It needs to be GW because we haven't done this couplet in 6 days, and you start playing that game. And it's like, everybody needs to have a system.
Yes.
And it's up to you. If you're sort of like the sole person doing it, then you just need to be very clear about like, how do you sort of, you know, get the pieces to fit together and mesh well in a way that makes sense, and just isn't like 3 people rotating chaos cluster.
And that was kind of what I was going to say with some of the blog style like class programming structures is like, I met a guy once who they used one of these companies, and it was like he ended up having to adjust the workouts anyways. It's like, okay, this won't work. I got to change this. My members can't do that. I got to change that. And so it's like, man, if you're going to take 2 hours to have to adjust everything, you might as well just write it yourself. You're basically doing that anyways.
Yeah. By the time you, I don't know, and I get that people don't want to do it, but at a certain point, like you have to put your stamp of approval on everything that goes out your gym store. Like, just because you don't want to do social media doesn't mean that you should hand to the preteen on the lobby and say, here you go, run our social media account. Like, you have to find systems in place to make sure that your quality's good.
Yeah. And you kind of also said it's like, not the teenager in the lobby, but like, I guarantee you have a coach on staff who wants to program. I guarantee you do. Because people don't come and coach class part-time for 20 to 25 bucks an hour for just because of the chances at wealth. Right. Like they friggin' love it. And if they haven't expressed an interest in programming, it's probably because like some people just need the permission, like for you to go up to them and be like, hey, would you have any interest in writing programming? And I guarantee you'd have at least one person on staff who's like, yeah, I would love to do that. And so it's like, you could be a drowning gym owner and just have someone do it and then you approve it.
That was like your first like individual design coach, is the way I understand it, was like he program designed for you for free, right?
Yeah.
But you were the guinea pig.
Yeah.
And that's all I wanted was a guinea pig.
Yep.
Somebody to test stuff out on. And it's like, I think for a lot of new coaches, until like you've done it for so long that you've gotten your reps and like it's not as intrinsically enjoyable and like having like a big learning curve. Like it becomes a job, frankly. Until it has become a job, a lot of people just like want to do it, and they'll do it for free.
Yeah.
And it's like, not that they should have to do it for free, but a lot of people, they don't care about the money, is my point. So it's like, they want to engage in coaching because they find that enjoyable and rewarding intrinsically. And in a large way, if you outsource your gym's programming, you're depriving your in-house people of that opportunity in a way.
Right.
I think that's a pretty good place to pause here. Let's do a part 2 to this. So we'll revisit it. And we'll get more into specifics of like how we might track or how your coaches, and maybe we can even have you like pull and talk to your coaches a little bit as to like what systems they use to like track things and to figure out like how much of this movement is okay, how much do we need to vary time domain, how narrow is our like the constraints on our skeleton, things like that. I think are going to be good follow-ups to this if people are actually programming for their gym. This was like a good big picture of like me and Chris is preaching on don't outsource your programming.
Seriously.
Don't pay us to do it. Pay your people to do it.
There you go.
Sweet. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening today. If you're someone who just started listening to the show, I would encourage you to subscribe so you can stay up to date. If you're someone who's been listening for a while, I would encourage you to rate and review the show. And lastly, the best thing that you can do to support our work is also the best thing that you can do for your performance. And that is by hiring one of our coaches. Until next time, stay the course.